सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Wajibul Qatl raged the elderly cleric, deserving of execution. Weeks earlier, in late 2018, Pakistan's Supreme Court had acquitted Asia Noreen, a Christian accused of blasphemy. The law of God demanded that the Prime Minister, the Supreme Court judges, and the Pakistan Army's chief all pay for that acquittal, thundered Peer Afzal Qadri, leader of the powerful Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan movement, or TLP. Either their drivers or their security guards should kill them, he said. Muslim generals should start a rebellion. Like blaspheming against God, treasonous talk in Pakistan, especially talk involving powerful men in uniform, can lead to an early appointment with the gallows. The leaders of the TLP were imprisoned, but then mysteriously they said sorry and were let off. Last week, little noticed amidst the chaos of an imploding Pakistan, the TLP was back on the country's streets. Faced with a protest march threat by the Islamist clerical group, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's government agreed to set up a counter-blasphemy department, issue a diplomatic letter to demand the release of incarcerated terrorist Aafia Siddiqui, and even reduce fuel prices. Even if it doesn't call them by their name, Pakistan is being quietly run by its own Ayotollahs, who negotiate with the state on behalf of a higher sovereign. They are laying the foundations for turning the country into a Sharia-run Islamic state, more surely than jihadists who have escalated violent operations across the country. Like so many stories about modern Pakistan, the rise of the TLP is entwined with 9/11. Following his decision to back the United States in its war on terror, scholar Iqbal Sevia has noted, General Pervez Musharraf's military regime threw its weight behind the Barelvi religious order to promote what the general called enlightened moderation. A Barelvi cleric was appointed Federal Minister for Religious Affairs, and 6 more were appointed to the Council of Islamic Ideology, which is responsible for making law consonant with faith. The pietist conservatism of the Barelvi movement, also known as the Ahle Sunnat, was seen as a counterweight to the Islamist radicalism of Sayyid Ahmad of Raebareli, the leader of a failed insurrection against the Sikh Empire, which inspired many jihadists, including the Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Masood Azhar. Even though the Ahle Sunnat was misogynist and illiberal in its values, it opposed Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. That was reason enough for Barelvi seminaries and leaders to receive millions of dollars in counter-extremism funding. There was a second, deeper reason for Pakistan to back the Barelvis though. Military regimes in the country had always sought legitimacy by cloaking their uniform in the robes of the clerics. Field Marshal Muhammad Ayub Khan had in the 1960s appointed the theologian Fazlur Rahman to head the Institute of Islamic Research, hoping to give his modernizing policies some religious foundations. The project didn't end well, and Rahman was forced into exile by hardliners before the hard-drinking Field Marshal was himself deposed by his own army. Then, in the late 1970s, General Muhammad Ziaul Haq lavished funding on clerics willing to support his rule. The general's clerics declared that Nizam-e-Mustafa, the order ordained by the Prophet Muhammad, demanded the centralization of power in a presidency and the abolition of political parties. This was, of course, exactly what General Zia was doing. General Zia's patronage of the religious right, though, contained the seeds of the theocratic warfare we're now seeing in Pakistan. Zia patronized in the main clerics affiliated with the Jamaat-e-Islami party, which opposed folk Islamic practices like worship at shrines and the veneration of holy relics. Finding themselves under attack, the Barelvi clerics began mobilizing. These violent Barelvi tendencies consolidated in a jihadist group under Salim Qadri, which was called the Sunni Tehreek. Far from being a madrasa-educated fanatic, Qadri was actually a semi-literate rickshaw driver who was attracted by the teachings of the Dawat-e-Islami, the proselytizing group that has inspired hundreds of blasphemy murders all the way from France and the United Kingdom to India in Udaipur. The Dawat-e-Islami is bitterly hostile to polytheists who it says will be cursed in the afterlife by having, and I quote, birds tear their flesh into small pieces and the wind separate their body parts and throw them into a distant valley. From 1988, scholar SBR Nasser has recorded, Qadri and his associates demonstrated a formidable talent for terror by assassinating their rivals on the Islamist right wing and massacring hundreds of members of the Shia minority. Khadim Hussain Rizvi, the founding leader of the movement that went on to become the TLP, warned Muslims not to associate with non-Muslims or adopt Western social norms. Scholars Arslan Ahmad and Bilal Zafar Rancha record. Leaders of the TLP canonized Mumtaz Qadri, a police officer who in 2011 assassinated the Punjab governor Salman Taseer for seeking reform of Pakistan's notorious blasphemy laws. Following Taseer's murder, the TLP unleashed repeated mass movements bringing the government to its knees time and again. Even though the army had patronized the TLP initially, hoping it would challenge jihadists, Hussain made clear he was unwilling to be a tool of the West. Terrorism and extremism, he claimed, were being used as pretexts for, and I quote, waging war against Islam. They want us to bring a moderate version of Islam which does not carry the teachings of jihad, he complained. The TLP leader gleefully witnessed the rise of COVID-19 in China, bucking Pakistan's long-standing reverence for the country. The Chinese had made 2 million Muslims captive, he said, and now it is suffering from God's wrath. They forced millions of Muslims to eat pork and drink alcohol. Oh Allah, destroy them. That wasn't the kind of language the generals wanted to hear. Hussain passed away at Lahore's Farooq Hospital in 2020, reportedly because of COVID, leading to one of the largest public gatherings in Pakistan's history. Leaders of political parties attended the event, and even former Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa, who you'll remember had been abused by the cleric, took the opportunity to extend his condolences. In private, many leaders hoped the cleric's son, Saad Hussain Rizvi, would prove less intransigent on the blasphemy issue than his father. Former Prime Minister Imran Khan in particular hoped to recruit the TLP to his own promise of building a Sharia-inspired state. The TLP proved made of more stern stuff and more cunning than the establishment. In the winter of 2020, the party unleashed yet another round of anti-blasphemy mobilization, this time to protest against caricatures of the Prophet published by the French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo years earlier. Even though the TLP failed to secure the expulsion of the French ambassador, its stated demand, the government agreed to end the prosecution of hundreds of its cadre and to revoke the proscription of the organization. Prime Minister Imran also showed a willingness to embrace elements of the TTP's core demands, a Sharia-governed state. Last year, he'd set up a high-level committee which was to promote Islam in public life, screen school curricula and media for blasphemy, and help create what he called an Islamic welfare state. Facing an economic implosion it is unable to contain, growing terrorist violence spearheaded by the Tehreek-e-Taliban that has metastasized across the country's northwest, and the ongoing political challenge from Imran, Prime Minister Shehbaz and the Pakistani generals can't risk opening a fourth front of battle with the TLP. Quiet surrender to the TLP last week demonstrates just how fragile the foundations of the Pakistani state itself have become. 70 years ago this summer, a cleric-led movement demanded the creation of an Islamic state where the fate of apostates and blasphemers would be judged by the regime, not by God. the TLP has brought that movement closer than ever before to success. The breadth of the print's detailed on-ground coverage and analysis have won it the supporters of loyal viewers and readers like you. But this journalism costs money and it needs your support. I appeal to you once again to subscribe to The Print, for which you can find the link in the description below. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm National Security Editor of The Print. Thank you again for watching Security Code.